welcome to Talent Buzz, where I talk about talent acquisition in fast-growing SaaS companies. And today I'm joined by Grace Woods, Head of Talent Acquisition at Oneflow. And we are discussing the importance of candidate experience, how to measure that one, how to get buy-in from your company, make sure everyone is involved, and how to really create a good candidate experience in different steps of your recruitment process. And let's start today's episode by hearing why it is super crucial to create a good candidate experience for your company.
I think this will change depending on the person you ask, definitely. But for me, I think one of the most important things is that, and this term is thrown around so much, but we are in a hugely competitive market right now. And years ago, tech jobs were for really, really skilled people, and it was very niche. Now everyone's in tech. Everybody's a tech company. Everyone's in tech. So you need ways to stand out. And in a recession, when you can't pay double market salaries anymore, you need to have ways that are that make you stand out from other companies. So in my experience, giving a good candidate experience is your first way in to be like, okay, nice. This company knows what they're doing. It reflects the company in a better way than other ones. So that's what I've found personally.
Yeah, I think it's good reason. And I believe that there is actually maybe kind of both the short-term and the long-term benefits for this one, because I think for short term, as you mentioned, like in current market situation, it's most likely easier to get those candidates right now. But then at the same time, like if I think, personally companies that I've been interviewing in the past, there are those companies that I could imagine maybe working someday if I would still go working for someone else. And then for sure, there are those companies where, for example, I've sent an application and I never got any reply. And it's weird because it affects both on the fact that I wouldn't be working there. But now when I think it more, there might be some companies that might be companies where we could buy some services for Talent B.
Yeah.
And if they have created bad candidate experience to me at some point, like I would really, really consider even doing, any kind of business with those kind of companies.
Yeah, it's first impressions. It's hugely based on first impressions. So as you were saying, for example, I had an interview before I moved to Sweden with a company, which I'm sure is a beautiful company and has beautiful people in. I'm not going to mention any names. But in my interview with this talent acquisition specialist, and this is me nitpicking now, but his camera was looking at his face, but when it's a different angle to where he's actually sitting. So he wasn't looking at me for a start. And then he was like, I'm just going to reply to a Slack message. Give me a minute. And started typing away on his computer. And I was like, first 10 minutes. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not working for this company. And that to me is candidate experience, because it is a first impression. You are the impression of the company. And if you're not given a good one, then it's downhill from there.
Yeah. And I think today we will go kind of deeper on candidate experience in different steps. But before we go there, I've been thinking like how companies should be measuring their candidate experience, because I think like one thing that a lot of companies are doing, for sure you are doing as well, is kind of getting, for example, NPS from the candidates.
Yeah.
But I think there is a little challenge over there, which is like first of all, like when you should be collecting that one, and like how do you really make sure that you get feedback from all the stages where the candidates are? So like how are you collecting feedback from the candidates?
So the applicant tracking system we use is Teamtailor. And we're obsessed with Teamtailor. We love it to death because it's thorough with things like analytics and collecting data and things like that. So some companies collect their NPS scores from application. So some companies do it from all stages. Some do it from first meeting. Some just do only accepted candidates, and some do from rejections as well. So the way we do it at Oneflow is that it's from the first meeting. We don't want to measure from application. I think we could do it this year and see what happens. because we have quite a nice message that they can, always come back if they're rejected and that kind of thing. But we do it from application, and it's accepted or offered and rejected candidates.
Yeah.
So at every stage in our process, we don't send them out manually. Team Taylor has a perfect software platform that does it all for us. But yeah, it works really, really well in our case, and people can leave comments as well, which we always reply to if they leave us a nice message or a positive message, or even negative messages. We obviously reply to those as well. We do try to reply to all of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how we collect ours.
Interesting. Because I think like the key over there is like, of course, it's super nice to get like, positive feedback on how nice the interview
Yeah.
was or how great communication was.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like like if we really want to make our candidate experience better and better all the time, I think it's important to get that feedback on how to do that one. And I think over there, there is kind of thin line. So there is, of course, that negative feedback when you really fucked something up. And I think every organization, if you are big enough, that happens at some point. Someone forgets to communicate with the candidates or something like that. But
Absolutely.
I think the big question is like how you could actually get that information from candidates who are like already super happy, but kind of get the ideas from them, like how to go from good to great, and kind of get that kind of insight, because I think that's super super important. And what you mentioned there regarding like should you measure the candidate experience on people who you don't even interview at all, I think that's interesting. I think you should, because I think for most of the companies that is actually the biggest mass of
That's
people
very
you
true.
never meet with, and kind of what kind of impression you leave for them, even though you wouldn't like to hire them, but there might be some friend or some colleague who's thinking about kind of going to work with your company, and then they discuss with them. And I think in that case the experience really matters over there.
I think it also, doing better and wanting to change things and innovation and thinking of different ways reflecting the kind of company you're in. Because, especially here, one of our company values is beat yesterday. So we're always focused on, how can we do better and what can we change? That's amazing, well done, but what can we do to improve it? So that's an amazing idea of how we can improve. So I'm going to steal that one, Samuel, and I'm going to tell them it was me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But hey, let's move to the candidate experience itself and the different steps of maybe recruitment process. And I think here the interesting part is like where you should actually draw the line on when kind of the candidate experience matters. And I think for most companies, think that it's from the moment the candidate maybe applies for the company to the moment maybe the contract is signed, or maybe the person is starting on the company, or when the onboarding is done or something like that. But let's start all the way from the beginning, because I personally think that candidate experience is actually starting already way before they are applying for the company. And the reason for that one is kind of the employer branding. And most job seekers out there, they want to do some kind of research on the company, what kind of company they are, what kind of people they are working. And if a company doesn't have that kind of information, let's say on their career page or social media, I think that already creates a bad candidate experience, because they want to find some information and then they are unable to find that one.
Yeah. I think most people want to work at cool companies now.
Yeah.
So if your company doesn't look cool online, no, not just that, but I think definitely brands and branding and employer branding is hugely important. And I'm glad that you said the candidate experience starts there, because it's not just from when they've applied. They need to want to apply, definitely. So this is in the career site, it's in the Instagram, the socials, the LinkedIn posts, how many people from the company are posting about where they work and their culture and that kind of thing. And people look at it. And I ask this in interviews all the time. And I know our chief of brand, actually, in her onboarding presentation, she asks, why did you apply? Why did you even apply to Oneflow?
Mm.
Some of them say the brand. I said the brand, definitely. I thought it was a cool company and I loved it. And
Yeah.
then some people say the interview process, the culture and how it looks and how it sounds. So yeah, you have to keep people interested, definitely. But yeah, it starts at the beginning before they apply.
And in your situation, like roughly, how big part of the kind of employees or the potential candidates come through, applications, so they are applying, and how much you are doing like outreach for potential candidates, like roughly?
Mm, the applications have got um, a lot more in the last couple of years. So
Mm.
we don't have to source as much. We have quite a big, um, what's it called? We have quite a big presence in Sweden right now, let's
Yeah.
say. So sourcing we do definitely still have to do, and we have people who are doing this full time at Oneflow.
Mm.
So tech, for example, you kind of have to headhunt tech people still. But for most of the roles, we get a lot of applications for, to be honest, which is nice.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
but we love to talk about OneFlow in a creative way. So even sourcing, I think, and actively looking for candidates is candidate experience, because you've got to do it in a kind of branded OneFlowy way that wants people makes people want to hear more about it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think kind of if we look at both of those sides, so first like outreach, and I think as you mentioned over there, it's really important to create a good kind of first impression over there. Of course, you hope that they would have kind of followed your company or your employer branding for a while already. That's kind of why you are doing that one, to make outreach easier as well. But if not, I think in most of the cases that might be actually the first touch point with the company for many people. So then kind of it's super important what kind of messaging you are using. And I've heard lately like so many bad stories about, recruiters sending, copy paste messages, like hundreds and hundreds of those. And then all you do basically is create a very poor brand experience, candidate experience. So I think kind of tailoring stuff over there is important. And then when we go to the kind of application side and how to apply, I think there, of course, kind of the thing we already discussed, like make sure that there is enough information. But what is super interesting for me is like the how easy it is to apply for a company. Because if it's too hard, or you need to fill up so many so many forms, so many fields, then you will drop out candidates over there. So like how have you balanced over there, kind of making it easy for candidates, but then at the same time you you most likely want to have some kind of information of the people applying as well, like how to find the balance there?
So when I joined OneFlow, I joined from a recruitment agency. So I was very aware of how quickly people lose interest. And you're on the phone to somebody, you're talking to a candidate, and then they've got another job. They've not even told you they're applying elsewhere. So you need to be quick. You need to make it easy. I completely agree. So I joined OneFlow and I learned that we use application questions on top of sending a CV.
Mm.
And the questions are there's one fun one we have all the time, tell us why you're awesome, or the most awesome thing about you, or something. And then we have some screening questions as well. So based on the role, always, but things that they're not too hard. They're not, you don't have to write paragraphs and essays of what you need to do,
Mm.
but it makes the application process smoother.
Yeah.
And of course it's gonna get rid of people. It's going to make people drop out. Maybe they don't have time, because a lot of things are quick apply on LinkedIn. But at the same time, we've tried this in a little bit of an A/B testing kind of way. If we don't have those application questions and it's a fast apply on LinkedIn, the quality of candidates is a lot different. And I don't mean quality in terms of experience, or I'm sure they're very, very experienced people, but they might not even be that suited to the job. They just apply to send an application.
Mm.
So the ones that have taken a little bit of time, I know some people say if you're not Google, don't act like Google, and we are aware of that. But it's not to say, oh, you desperately need to want to work at Oneflow. Like, show us you want to work here. It's not to do with that. It's to do with trying to make the screening easier for us, and the application easier for us, and the interview to have more talking points about. Because if they have written a lot of personality into those questions, then it's so much more fun to do the interview.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And I think the important part there is really to find the balance, like how many questions you can ask. Because like if you put, let's say, 15 questions over there, you will kind of drop out most of the candidates. And then at the same time, if you have one, you might get too many. And then I think it also depends on the role a bit. If you know that you will get like a lot of high quality applications, then maybe you kind of can afford having more questions over there. But then if it's a hard to fill role, maybe less. And actually, something we've been testing out for our own recruitments is actually something quite interesting, and it kind of works because we are still small business and we don't have super high volumes on our career site or anything like that. But we tried out putting a calendar link where anyone can book the first 15 minutes interview already. Like, no need to apply, just book 15-minute intro call with us.
Good luck.
And that kind of works. There are good and bad sides of that one. Most of the time it works because when people go to our site, they went through that one. And actually on the calendar link, when you book the call, when you are booking time, it asks you actually 3 questions, and that kind of drops out some of the people. But then we had a quite big challenge with that one. End of last year, when we published that we started to go for the 4-day work week, and we had a ton of traffic on our career site, and my co-founder Sarah, who was kind of running those first intro calls with our
Yeah.
own potential employees,
So you were
her
actually
calendar
working
got
5 days a week
filled.
at that time.
Yeah, and then we moved to 4 days work week, and then our calendar filled up with everyone who I want to join your company and
Yeah.
all that. So if you are getting high volumes to a career site, then I wouldn't recommend anyone having a book a 15-minute intro call straight away, because then you don't have time for anything else.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think that the balance that we have found works best is one question that's quite fun, and then 3 maybe role type questions, 3 or 4 depending on the seniority of the role. But they shouldn't be desperately hard to answer. They should be questions that are going to differentiate people. So a question about the role that's going to make people think in different ways. So how do you personally do this? Not what is the way in the industry to do it. How do you do it? And in that way, it's a different data set. On top of a CV or a cover letter, it's our questions that are asking the same things to every candidate every time. And it does differentiate them a lot. And I think it really helps now. I've changed my mind. I've been sold by the application questions.
Exactly. Hey, what do you think then, kind of, after the applications, then kind of becomes the interviews or the discussions with the candidates? And of course, depending on your recruitment process, there might be multiple of those ones. And let's not go through like first interview, second interview, task phase and
Yeah.
everything like as separate, but maybe as a whole. Like, how do you think that a recruiter or hiring manager or who's ever running those interviews, like how to create that safe space and a good experience, and kind of make sure that the interviews are not really like super hard questions like bam bam bam, but rather a real discussion and good experience for the candidates.
Definitely. I think that could be a podcast episode on its own about how to create an interview that's authentic. But I think the best way of doing it is to know that the candidate needs you as much as you need them, or you need the candidate as much as they need you. So
Mm,
it shouldn't be a firing line of questions and trying to, put people on the spot and find their weaknesses and that kind of thing. You want to get the best out of them, and
mm,
people kind of express themselves the best when they are comfortable, not when they're terrified.
mm,
And interview processes are terrifying. Even I sit there, and I do it all day, every day, and I sit there sometimes like nervous about the person to join in 1 minute, and I'm like, why am I scared?
mm,
So I think they're just not a very natural experience for a lot of people. They're being judged when we're in a society that everybody judges everyone all the time. But this is, you're putting yourself forward to be judged, quite literally. So people don't like it, and the best way I find is to be a human being instead of asking a load of questions and being very cutthroat. And it doesn't work anymore, especially in our generation and younger, because they do not care. They will leave the interview.
mm,
If they don't like you, they're logging out. So you kind of have to keep up with the way everything's going and be more authentic, be a normal person, and be yourself. Like I called a guy the other day. So obviously, I've told you I've been traveling around Colombia for a month, and I got back. I went straight back to work, and probably shouldn't have done because I couldn't sleep. And I woke up, and I thought, shit, I had an interview before, and I've not woken up. I called him straight away. I was like, I am so sorry. I've just been to Colombia. I've come back. I'm jet lagged to death. I didn't wake up. I'm so sorry. I can call you in however many minutes. So he was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry. Oh my God, it's fine. And we got there. We had an amazing interview because I didn't make something up like, oh, the technology was down. There's no point. And it would have been
mm.
creating a lie and caught in a lie. And there was no point in doing it. So I would just rather tell them the truth. And I think that
Yeah.
created such like an authentic space for the interview because he knew that there was nothing to be scared of because I literally overslept like a 4-year-old. So he wasn't scared of me. I was kind of like, oh, sorry to him. And it was amazing. It was a really, really nice conversation. So I think that is the basis of it. Not being
Yeah.
late, but being authentic, I think.
Yeah. What do you think of the word interview? I think when we're talking about interviews, it kind of shares the mindset that now the company is asking questions like, should we change the word to not job interview, but maybe job discussion or something like that?
Well, funny you should say that actually, because I start a lot of mine with I don't even like the word interview to be honest. This is more like a podcast to me,
Mm,
and that is genuinely how I start off a lot of mine at the moment. On meeting, I call it a meeting. In this meeting, we're going to discuss. So I don't even say the word interview.
yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up because it's a really, really good point, and it sets a nice atmosphere in the
Yeah.
meeting. Let's say.
Exactly.
But they
Exactly.
are. If you can do them like podcasts, you'll be smashing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, you are clearly, passionate about the candidate experience, but I think most of kind of your colleagues within your company and within other companies as well, like working in recruitment or talent acquisition, they are inspired by creating a good candidate experience. But I think the big struggle comes when you bring in other people. You bring in the hiring manager, you bring
Mm-hmm.
in the teams who are not experts in recruiting.
No.
Like how to get, like, first of all, maybe the buy-in from those people to create a good candidate experience, and for example, how you are coaching your people towards making sure like the candidate experience is in a good level, whoever the hiring manager is, and so forth.
Yeah. I think this comes down to the culture and the relationships a lot because. I mean, they're not experts in recruitment. That's not their, say, marketing, for example. They're not recruitment experts, but they might have 10 years experience in recruitment. So they have their own ways of doing it. They have their own ways of interviewing, for example. But it's not in their OKRs. It's not in their key results. It's not in their individual results. They don't need to care about what results we get, but we do care. So I think the way that we have found it work the best is having a tight relationship with the hiring managers. And I mean, not just for recruitment, I mean, inside work. Like I'm lucky in this company. We're a company of best friends. We've got 200 best friends under this roof. It's insane. So it's easier in here than I've had in the past. But I think if you can have a regular contact with your hiring manager, even if you've got nothing to talk about, so a weekly meeting of 15 minutes of discussing the pipelines, discussing the candidates, what they've liked, what they've not liked. And I remember this time last year, maybe I was talking to an engineering manager about our recruitment. And it was something that we couldn't get anyone of. There was like one candidate in a month or something, and we had that meeting religiously every single week, 8:30 in the morning. It was my earliest meeting of the week, and we just spoke about like football. And he was a Liverpool supporter, disgustingly, but and I support United, so we were head to head. But that's what we spoke about, and we created such a close relationship that it was easy. And then coming into the point is that they want you to achieve your results because you're close to them. You work very closely. They know you on a personal level. So if they don't give you feedback on time, they feel bad because you're their friend now. You've befriended them. You've got them in. So I think that helps feedback time. It helps their actual feedback that they give because they know that you have to relay this to the candidate. That helps the candidate experience a lot. And it makes everything smoother. Befriend the hiring managers more than just through the recruitment process, I would say.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Good tip. Mm-hmm. Hey, last question for today. We've been talking a lot about, collecting feedback from the candidates. You mentioned that you had this cultural thing where you like always kind of aim for better and wanna improve. So can you give like one example on what you have done lately in your recruitment process to get the candidate experience to the next level, like an actual thing?
I don't know if I have an actual thing, to be honest, but the way we do our I do have one. The way we do our first stage interviews is, as I said, I do mine like a bit of a podcast. I'm always, it's a conversation. It's not firing questions and that kind of thing. But I think explaining the culture can be done in such an energetic way, let's say. So not just asking them questions about how they fit into your culture. The way we do it is we explain our culture. So we give the value, which is a buzzword everywhere. So company values and how do they work though? So give me a concrete example of what Oneflow does to explain this value. So as I said before, beat yesterday. So I'll say the way we work towards this, here's an example of how we use beat yesterday. And then I think they understand, then she can actually pinpoint what that means in an example at Oneflow, not just saying we value transparency and then how? So I make that into a bit of a game type thing, and I'll give you an example, you give me an example, and I think that makes it so much more interactive. And I'm not judging them. I'm saying, yeah, we do mess up, we make mistakes. This is how it happens in our lives. How has it happened in yours? Like what's going on with you? And then they might say like, well, I made a mistake at the start of my career. I'm like, no. Come back to yesterday. I know you did one yesterday, so tell me. But when you have that relationship with the candidate, you can be like that. You can be cheeky and you can mess about with them a bit. So I think a lot of it is the interview process. But then again, everybody's got to be on the same page. We're not just the only interview. They have another few after us. So I think we are all aligned, and we're very, very quick with response times because we do measure that as well. So that's important. So they just love us, I think. I don't know why. I'm not going to take all the credit, obviously. Most of. No, I won't.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you got a lot of good ideas about SaaS talent acquisition. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to share it on your social so others can hear it too. And if you have a topic in mind that you would like me to cover in this podcast, share it with me as well. I'm Samuli, CEO and co-founder in TalentBee, where we help fast-growing SaaS companies in their talent acquisition. Make sure to follow us, make sure to follow this podcast, and have an awesome week. Bye-bye.